This conference will now be
I
recorded.
do have numbers to start with if you want to hear them on the vacation rentals.
Sure.
That's a good question, because I want to follow up on that as far as the unregistered is regarding if they're on meters or not.
Okay, 438 people have signed up so far.
Okay.
And of those 438, 255 in the village, 188 in town. And they sent out letters last week. Remember I told you like 20 of them? Actually, it was fines. And they're now down to 10 people not in compliance.
Do we know if those particular ones that are all on meters within the village?
On meters?
Water
Yeah,
meters.
Water meters.
Sharon went through the entire list that she received. She met with Brad this morning because we weren't sure if there was a separate fee for replacing the head versus replacing the entire meter. And Brad said, we're not replacing heads, we're just replacing the entire meter. So all those letters should go out tomorrow, letting them know that they have to have a meter put into place. But a good majority of them already had meters.
So what would you be approximate?
I'd say 65% of them have meters,
So.
more than half. So she'll get the rest of those letters out. They were made aware in the permit though that they had to have meters.
My
So
understanding is
as we
nothing in the
go-
permit that you can't comply with is holding you back from registering and being under the understanding, like say you can't get your chimney inspected because the guy can't get there for 3 months.
Oh, yeah.
That's not, same thing I'm sure with the water meter.
But the fact that that those are non-compliant, then it just, well, there should be some additional fines for the water that they're using if possible.
They're not even finding the people that they sent fines out to. He's kind of letting them go because they signed up. I mean, let's face it.
No, I mean, the ones that even are
Well,
unregistered.
yeah, I think you raised a good point, and that is if they respond and they become compliant, then we're fine.
Sure.
If they don't, then maybe a mechanism, but we don't have it in the local ordinance at the moment, so that would be an ordinance thing that we might want to keep our eye on for sure.
Additional fines for water if they are not. Okay.
Anybody
It is in the law to have it, but I guess if they're just.
Well, and I would say I'd give them 2 weeks after the letters are sent out because the guys are gonna have to run around and put meters.
I mean, those are, I'm even talking about ones that, how many are in the village are not even applied. So that's the ones that they're renting it as a mini hotel and they're getting the water at a residential rate, which is completely unfair.
And don't forget too, let's say we end up at 448. We're requiring all the condos that Whiteface Inn to register.
Mm-hmm.
So that number's got to be built in there. Take all the people that are only renting 2 weeks of the year. I know a few people doing that to pay their taxes, take those out. And really, how many vacation rentals are we down to? But I can get that information. Like, once this all comes in, we can start sorting that out and I'll bring it.
Yeah.
So we'll
I think
certainly
that
know
was-
a lot more about that activity than we
Sure.
did before the legislation was put out there. I think the process so far, I'm frankly, I'm kind of happy that we've gotten all but 10 into compliance already.
Mhm.
We didn't do that well with the bed tax 10 years ago, that quickly, or 30 years ago, or whatever it was.
So, and frankly, this will obviously for each one of these that has applied, they also had to apply to the county for bed tax. And so our county bed tax take should be increasing, and that all in one way, well, of the total bed tax of 5% now, the 3% that's been there right along comes back to Rose by the terms of the legislation. The additional 2% that's being collected as of June comes back to the original community where it was originated from. But Art can explain a little bit better what the.
Do you want to do that now, or do you want to wait till I get my information?
Might be better if you get all the, I tried to open that stuff you sent last night. It's apparently the software, it wouldn't open.
I'll open it, copy it, and send it to you.
Okay, that'd be great.
And Art, if you can, if we're creating that baseline of with the number that are registered in the village and the small number that are unregistered in the village, we can create a timestamp with
We don't know if
that.
they're
We
in
don't
or
know
out.
if they're in or out of it. There's just 10 people that have.
I'm just saying if we can obtain the address, we very easily, Mike said that he he can discern, he knows who they are, whether the designation. My point being is if we can timestamp that number and then we revisit either monthly or bi-monthly to see if those numbers are increasing, those requests for permits, to see if a moratorium down the line, when it's appropriate, is a possibility depending on the numbers that are increasing. So we have objective numbers to measure that sort of decision off, if that makes any sense.
More information, the better.
Yeah, because it's like to say now, let's have a moratorium, well, we only have X number, well then, would 20 more really hurt? Maybe not.
Well, I
But
think,
would 100, but it's,
but I think what we're looking for from the land code revision, and we're actually very close now to sending out a request for proposal for someone to come in and be the expert. But we don't want to say like all of a sudden we want this area, like Johnson Avenue, we'll say, or Trillium or something like that. They might want to designate it as no vacation rentals whatsoever. This is residential.
Mhm.
And if we don't put a moratorium in place before that can be done, 2 or 3 people buy in there, now they're grandfathered, and you've got people and they're making noise and being a problem. That's kind of what that's for.
okay, I just, yeah, but just having that sort of definitive, there's no, well, we think there's a clear cut number here. A month later, within the village, there's an increase, 2 months. We just want to measure that moving forward.
I hope by next workshop, I can tell you the breakdown of those 448, what they are. That'd be very helpful, I think.
Fantastic.
And hopefully by then, everyone will be in compliance.
Mhm.
At least we have a rental permit in place. If we hadn't done that, we wouldn't have any of these numbers. We wouldn't know what was where. So at least we're that far along.
Well, a lot of people feel like this is the start, but we can.
It's a start. You're
But
right.
let's be aggressive moving forward as far as collecting data and making.
I agree.
Well, I think on a routine basis that the code office should be providing both boards, this board in particular, with a monthly, or maybe not monthly, monthly initially maybe,
Mhm.
but which would give us a breakdown of the totals, and break the 255 down into the various types of categories
Mhm.
so that we know what we're dealing with. And I also think that since we're working with host compliance, the complaints, I think they don't have to give us the individual details, but I think they should give us the total complaints received for that month and break them down again by property classifications and type of complaint.
That seems reasonable.
Then I think we have a better way of managing what we're working with here, because many of these properties may never have a complaint. I hear that from some of these property owners, that, we've never had a complaint. We do this, we do that,
Mhm.
and it's never been a problem. Well, that's,
A few bad people spoil it for a lot of people.
I just know it's,
but that's what enforcement is geared to address. So
And I think a lot of people that maybe were marginal will behave themselves now. Let's hope it works.
it was a little loud in my neighborhood, but it was one of those, am I just being annoyed? Or is this, but it was like 8:45 and you could still hear, I'm like, it's not 9:30 yet, even though I'm putting my son to sleep. It's more of an annoyance. But it was like, it never persisted beyond 9:30. So it's one of those.
As you know, I've said all along, I do not understand why someone can rent a house in a residential neighborhood and have a party. I just don't think that should be a right that a vacation rental should have, but I got outvoted on that by everybody. But down the road, if it becomes a problem, we can revisit it.
Oh, I was always wondering, you really shouldn't be able to run a pseudo hotel in a residential neighborhood, but we're here.
But unfortunately, we had nothing in the land code to prevent it, so
Yeah.
here we are.
yeah, and in fact, there's nothing in the state codes that prevents it.
Mhm.
It's a right to some degree, and the argument of that litigation that's out there right now is that rights that are inherent to the owner of any residence are being infringed upon.
That is public knowledge that we are, there is litigation in the village. Okay, so it is public knowledge that we are being sued
Yeah,
by.
in fact, it was in the newspaper the other day. It was published that way.
Okay.
Which is fine. I mean.
Because I've been cautiously talking about it because I didn't
Well, we
want
should-
to know that.
Since we're being litigated against, we should let our counsel do the talking. I agree with that. But, and frankly, they cautioned all of us in the very beginning. if we're, and I don't think any of us have discussed the case.
It's got, oh, no, the details, no, just the fact that we're being litigated and,
Who is our counsel?
Our insurance carrier provided counsel.
Okay.
The name, I know you all received communication from them in the beginning. It's kind of gone out of my
Three
mind.
lines, I can't think what it is.
it just,
But it's from our insurance carrier.
Yeah, it's through our insurance carrier, right?
I don't know if people really perceive, they feel that the village of Lake Placid is being sued, but the village of Lake Placid is just representative of the community of the village of Lake Placid. So the village, the community of Lake Placid is being sued. So I just want to make that clear.
And it's not just the village, it's also, it's joint with village and town.
Town part, so the community as a whole, Lake Placid is being sued.
For the moment, it's, you know, it'll eventually, it'll clear its way through and the issues, it's in, I believe it's in the federal court, where people are more concerned about their civil rights.
And Janet's going to keep updating us for board meetings, executive sessions as that progresses. She estimated.
Yeah, we always give her the opportunity to speak if she wants, and that's still an ongoing case, so, yeah, I would think she would. So, Mindy, did you have something you wanted to?
I got all sorts of stuff. I'll be quick though.
Peter's going to be 30 to 40 minutes behind today.
And I already talked to him about one of these pieces, so he's aware of it. I brought up a few, I think it was the last admin meeting, that Tracy was looking into a new time clock system. She found a couple of them. She went back through with Scott from, Illuminated Concepts, and he kind of picked through the different ones that we had and what looked best. This one is actually extremely functional and extremely affordable, and it will work in every single department from the PD to electric to highway, sewer, whatever. And it will help us not only keep time, but keep track if somebody gets a call out. So it's a face recognition system that has a mobile app. So if the guys get called for a call out in the middle of the night, I know highway always has to go get a truck, so they punch in anyways, but sometimes water, they may have to go to a water sewer break, or electrical goes right to the ABC office or building. So this will give them the opportunity to punch in on their phone. That way I'm not getting a slip if there was a call out and we missed it, or if somebody gets injured on a call out, at least we have a record of time that they were out there. We spoke with the insurance company and they don't have an issue with us not recording call outs, but if it ever came down to it, they're gonna side with the village over the employee because we don't have any record of them being out there besides something that's handwritten. So for this case scenario, it's quick. I didn't know if face recognition would work because the beards come in the winter and they go away in the summer. The masks, whatever.
Not for everyone.
No, not
That's
for
one of
everyone.
those that are blessed with minimal to no facial hair.
But it's a 16-point system, so nose, eyes, it measures more than just right here. Because I know my husband's beard's down to about here. And I'm like, that's never gonna work. But it does. So it'll allow us to, the current system that we have, we can only look at a week at a time. This way, if Kimball called me and said, how many comp hours did so-and-so use from point A to point B? Now, granted, our current accounting system, our new accounting system can do it. Our old couldn't, but I could pull a full report up that shows the number of comp hours that were used by a particular person or how many they gained based on how many call outs they had.
Mm-hmm.
The clocks are a flat $500 to purchase each clock.
The clock goes at the base, like the electric department. DPW.
Right. So we buy 7 total clocks, which is $150. They took $150 off the retail price for us. And then the annual fee to keep it going is $880 for the year, which we pay right now $700 a year for our current time clock system. So really the only additional cost would be to buy the clocks. But at least this way we have track of everybody. because God forbid somebody got hurt and they weren't punched in, or they were punched in and they weren't there, or whatever the case may be. At least we can keep track this way.
And this is one system that works across
Yes,
all
every
departments,
single
so
department
we
will
don't
have the same one.
uh,
Because right now we have 3
And the apps work between iOS,
and Android.
Android.
Mhm.
Does this also mean all the time cards will be the same?
Yes.
Has that been a dream?
Yes. So this will make
That's
it
worth it right
much,
there.
much easier. And there is a function, Tracy is still working with Encode, where they can do an export file from this software and import it into our current accounting software. So all she'll have to do is make some minor tweaks, which will make the payroll process go a lot faster.
And I'm assuming if you sign in on a call out at night from your mobile app, that would only be if you aren't going to first go to the electric department.
Right.
It's, okay.
Right, so if you're going directly to the
Because you have to.
location, because there's already a truck there, there's already a person there,
You're needed.
exactly. Then you have the option on your mobile app, but they're all GPS located, so we can tell where they
Good.
punched in. So they're not sitting at home at 7 o'clock in the morning when they're supposed to be at work and going, okay, I'm in for the day.
Yep.
And then show up an hour later.
Are we gonna create add this to the handbook, the procedure of when to use?
That would be a very good idea, because we haven't had this option before.
Okay.
So that's definitely, I didn't even think of that, so that's a good idea. So that's the time clock portion I have. Any questions on it?
Good job.
Since that doesn't involve any meaningful cost,
Right,
additional
I'll still do a PO for it though, just so that we have record, and have everyone sign off on it.
questions whether or not you want the, you
On the
can just
agenda.
go ahead and put it in. Everything that I've heard about it, that we've discussed, I believe that it probably is, for the first time, maybe it's one system, whereas today we're operating with 3, and there are oftentimes that people, quite frankly, are not signing in correctly.
And is this going to streamline the back end, the administrative portion, so there's?
Absolutely, because as it stands right now, we have one-time system that does the electric, any of our in-house, like the girls in there, Stacy, Victoria, as well as the the sewer department. They all use this clock system, and it calculates out to the like 10th of a second, like you get every single second. Most time clocks, if it's 7 minutes before it rounds back, 7 minutes after it rounds ahead. What we currently have doesn't do that. So like the girls in the main office will get 0.32 of comp time, where instead they could get 15 minutes of comp time, or vice versa, depending on when they come in. We try and round as much as we can, but in some instances it just doesn't work.
Does it do the calculations for you?
Yes.
That's nice too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the water has their own like swipe card system. Highway has a swipe card system. PD has their own system that they use, which I think, Scott, you know better than me.
I don't know what the reason is.
I think
never had
they
one
just
before, so
write
yeah.
down how many hours they were there. But
They
you
have-
can
they have a
also,
sign-in sheet that they do.
Yeah. but it'll also calculate in the built-in overtime. So they don't have to worry about that portion of it.
So the clock, they just stand in front of it, so
Stand in
there's
front
no
of it,
more
hands their face.
punch, no old school.
No.
Yeah. Just Big Brother staring out, you know. Rolling the database.
Yes, big brother. The little camera's watching. I just bought my daughter a Santa cam to watch her for Christmas.
Mhm.
My child has been immaculate. She's like, Santa's watching, oh my gosh. And they get one for every room in the house.
Let me get one of those, what is it, Amazon, the house drones. that
Oh,
fly
yeah.
around your house.
You get the one that hangs on your tree now too.
When you do virtual classes, Jason, do you have the cameras that follow you?
No, I don't, at the elementary school, there hasn't been a teacher that has adopted that sort of component of it. At the middle high
Sounds
school.
like, I don't know, you can walk around, just go to different things, you can't just pan.
There's, and I'm, not to, take up a lot of this time, there's just a lot of, there are other students, you want to respect their privacy as well. So when you start incorporating other students within the sort of the frame of the teacher teaching, then it starts to get a little wonky. So that's an ongoing discussion. So generally those are facing the board, seeing what the teacher is presenting, and then working one-on-one with them as they, go from the lesson to guided practice to independent practice. I don't know if there's a teacher that's using the camera walls more.
Next topic.
Next on my docket is, I got a call from BCM1. It's a telecommunication consulting company. We currently use Magna 5, which used to be Cornerstone, as our provider into our phone systems. This company was actually started in 1992 by somebody who used to work for Cornerstone. All they're asking is if I will send them our monthly statement. They can generally reduce our monthly bill by
Just to do a review.
20 to 40%. And they have increased bandwidth speeds because ours are very slow here. But they can work in conjunction with Slick as well to see if there's a possibility to increase, because everything's on the cloud now. Our whole accounting system's on the cloud, our utility billing, everything.
But data lines coming in are very, at least a gigabyte, but we have fiber going in, so anything that's slowing down is the internal connectivity.
Right.
Dank brought the fiber, I believe brought the fiber into the building.
I think they brought the fiber to like connect us.
But Cindy has been
I
talking
have not
about
yet,
the
no, but I wanted to make sure.
speed.
If you're,
And
Well, I
frankly,
asked him to get a hold of
I've
Slick to
used,
see if they
I'm
can
not
increase our
sensitive
bandwidth
enough,
into the building.
But
But
even
that
after-
being said,
after
maybe it's
Slick
an
came in
internal
here,
thing,
it
which would
really
be more
works to
than
be appreciable.
than
It's just a good resource.
Zip in, but I can just throw it.
you're throttled by your Wi-Fi.
This is just mostly to
So
see if
depending
they
on
can-
if you're plugging part of your Ethernet cable into the wire.
I'll ask Scott.
For instance, at school, I'll have almost a half a gig of speed if I'm plugged in, but I only have
Not saying you will, but.
30 or 40 megabytes.
I had
if
never
I'm
heard of
using
them
Wi-Fi,
before,
you know,
and
it just
the
depends on
guy
how you
called me and
access
sent some
it.
information, and
So,
I figured I'd just bring it up to see what everybody thought. So,
I'm really beginning to understand gigabytes and megabytes and the rest of this stuff, because this little phone with the village emails, I didn't realize. But since the virus thing hit back in March, the volume of emails coming in, I burned up. This only has 16 gigs of storage.
yeah,
So it's
you need to
become,
delete yours.
in the last month, it's become useless.
Yeah, 16 gigs use it as a phone. No.
I looked at a
That's
basic iPhone coming out today, and they start at 4 times that.
mhm.
Yes, start. They're mini computers, this one I think was like 1,000, but.
Actually, I was
over 3
hoping,
years.
this would get me through until April, when I would need the village stuff on there.
You're always gonna need it though, that's the thing. You're gonna say you're not, you're always gonna need it.
But, and it also obviously affects the speed. This will not open up any attachments anymore.
Oh, yeah.
It's tired out.
Okay, last thing. Trying to go quick, but a gentleman from ClearGov got in contact with me. They provide digital budget books. So it's a budgeting software, and it's used in conjunction with our accounting software. A lot of Info customers actually utilize it. This one in particular, he went through a demonstration with me, and he's gonna send me a short demo that I can send out to everybody. It has everything on it. So we take our regular budget that you would get, which is in paper PDF version, which is very boring and non-interactive and just a bunch of numbers, which the average person from the village wouldn't know how to read because they don't understand our codes. It takes it and it puts it into a web format, breaks it out by department, takes the revenue and expenditures and makes them interactive, charts them. You can put them in a line chart, you can put them in a bar graph, you can put them in a pie chart, you can put them in whatever way you want them. But it'll show what last year's the year before, they import all of our budgeting information into their software. And then somebody who knew or wanted to know where the village was at finance-wise could go on and say, okay, what was the highway department's salt usage for the last 5 years? Or Brad could go on and say, what was the usage for the last 5 years? And it would actually chart it out for them.
I've asked, I remember way back, who's the treasurer for Paul? I forget the
Peggy?
name. Peggy, oh yeah, Peggy. I've asked her a long time, like, can we somehow have a graphical representation of what our budget? She's like, our software can't do this. I'm like, how much are we paying for this?
Well, and this is just an import function, so everything would still be done in the accounting software. The only thing that we're providing to this company is what we would provide to any individual person in the community if they went on our website and pulled up our budget. But they put it in a format that's understandable and you can add more to it. So we've been talking to Kate Thompson about the website and how we can, make the website more user-friendly.
Yes.
This software actually, within the budget book, which you'd still click on the budget link like you do now, actually brings up what our daytime or our weekday residents versus our weekend residents are, our winter versus summer. It pulls all the census information so that you can see where we lie on a day-to-day basis or a year-to-year basis as far as how many people actually live here. You can put a different synopsis as to, what the village is known for. You can put different anecdotal things for that particular year. So say next year's budget, we had part of the Main Street project and we could put a summarization of what was done and why it was affecting the budget in that particular. So you always have a track record. The software is not cheap, $7,000 a year, but it will it will encompass everything for us.
And this would be primarily for public education?
Yes, so it would take our budget and put it into a workable format for people to actually understand. Instead of skimming through the pages going, I don't know if mayor approved versus requested versus last year, or what number am I looking at, or where are we at percentage-wise, because it doesn't give percentages.
It would be spread out over all the departments, I assume.
Yes, all the departments would be individual. There's different tabs.
No, I meant for the cost.
Yes. Yeah. it
Have
would be
other
on one
communities
specific.
use this?
Many other, and I asked him to send me a list, and I don't know if he actually did or not.
Well, you said he was going to provide a,
Some all for public access
Yeah.
and transparency, but I just want to make sure that we're spending 7,000, not like it'll be utilized.
Oh, no, absolutely. He was supposed to send testimonials over.
Is this a Tyler project?
It's through ClearGov, so it's a government municipality software. They only work with municipalities. I'm trying to see.
And you said Kate Thompson is looking, is this going to be part of her?
Well, it could be incorporated into her overall,
She knows about it.
not as of yet. This came up after our last meeting. So I have not had a conversation with her about it.
Well, it seems in line with her.
It seems like it should be linked to the website.
Absolutely.
So you might.
Rybrook's the only one that they sent at the end. But I can pull up the, like you can go on their website right now to cleargov.com and type in like Placid. And even though we don't have an account with them, it'll still pull our analytics. So it'll pull how many people have been here, how many people day versus night, or weekday versus weekend, summer versus winter. It's all based on census data. But I'll have him, because he was supposed to send those to me, send some more of the testimonials. As I said, the only one that I have right now is Rybrook, New York, and it's the village administrator. But they have many clients that they work with on a regular basis.
the public education piece of this, if we can, once we've seen the demonstration.
Which I'll send it out to everybody.
I certainly, from a transparency point of view, there could be some benefit in that. Foundations that we're familiar with, our hospital, when they send out their annual reports, they basically do the same thing. they basically give you some, they don't give you the raw numbers, they give you some graphs and pie charts that,
Kind of like an infographic,
yeah.
just pictures.
Oh, yeah, it makes more,
You know,
it makes
you're
it
looking
a
at-
lot easier to look.
You're looking at about
at.
$600 a month here on average, so I think we'd want to feel that it, you would all want to feel that it was valuable. I think the antecedent information is interesting because that the only way I can even look back at it is to save all my budgets from year to year and go back and literally look up year by year what I need to know. So could be some value to future board trustees and that, and also not to mention our administrative team.
22.
We don't really have a definitive way of showing trends.
So, I mean, so one time, they import this one time, once a year,
Yes,
take our budget, put it in. What about, when we change the budget?
for budget
For
adjustment
adjustments.
purposes, they can do an import. It's all included in that $7,000 fee. So they can do
Throughout the year,
the
they.
import.
It says
Yep.
we have 25.6 million unedited revenues, which is 718% higher than similar towns, but we have expenses of 18.9, which is 503% higher than similar towns.
Yeah, he did a
Good to know.
Right?
deck page for us when he did the presentation and pulled what he could off the web.
I prefer to think we're always lower.
No, we're certainly in the black for sure, but we have a lot of projects to do.
Might be nice, I certainly would be interested in seeing the demonstration material.
Absolutely.
Now, is this something you mentioned to the town as well?
I have not.
Say that is Kate Thompson is working with the village and the town. This is public knowledge and might be something that could just. show
I
both
will
of
mention
us.
it to Catherine. I know I had a conversation with her, what's today? I had a conversation with her Friday. And their budget's pretty strapped this year. But I will definitely put it out there and let her know about it.
You know, I don't know where the community benefit budget's going to go. So it certainly seems like the benefit to the community is to know what's going on. And so you never know down the road, there might be some money. So it might be able for them to hear what's going on.
Sure,
Just a
I can
thought,
do that.
just a thought.
And that's all I have.
That's all. Kim,
All I have is,
I know you're going to give us a good report.
The lights are on, right?
And Lincoln.
won't be Wakely, I can promise you that. So, the outage went good, I mean, it ran a little bit longer than National Grid estimated, but that was good for us, because we got more work done. The Tupper bill ran a little bit higher than I told you, but that was because the outage ran longer. They got everything done on their list.
How long did it take them? 4 hours was the max, I take it.
They were saying that they thought 2 hours, but I think they left a little too much there to do. So they released their clearance about 3:30, then they had to do
So
complete their lockout, tag out, go to Raybrook, close the switch.
Is that going to continue in the future the same way? No, it won't, because they can switch right at the substation.
It depends on what they have to do. I mean, so if a tree came down, they'd have to pretty much do the same procedure they did that night.
Because that is a timely, that is a bunch of time that's chewed up just with one guy has to run back to Raybrook, shut it off, come back to Placid, confirm that it's shut off before anybody can do anything.
can you make a phone call?
Actually, they didn't run back and forth, but they first locked out here and then ran to Stern, they called in,
Okay.
then they were allowed to put their grounds on.
So it came, they're in and out under 4 hours.
I think it came out about 3:51.
Yeah.
I was thinking
I mean,
24 hours.
it stayed, the lights were on within the 4-hour range. There was some outage on one primary circuit that was,
And then it went back out for about 20 seconds, came back on again.
it's just the bounce effect, right?
Yeah.
Hit the end of the line and bounce back.
And we demoed the line, the old line, once it was gone, we allowed us to build a new line into the substation. That got completed last Thursday.
After you remove the negative metering.
Yeah,
So pretty much wrapped up?
pretty much. I mean, we haven't energized the substation number 1 yet. We're waiting to, we could do it if we needed to, but there's a bunch of transformers that could use some work in there. So we may be doing that. And once we find out when the new SCADA server gets installed, we'll make a decision on what we do. There's no point paying the engineer to come just to put the substation into service. We can put it into service, it will just be on one breaker is all.
So right now, we're running the entire village off from the sub 3.
Yes,
But you're also not running electric heat in the winter time.
True.
It's a good time of the year for this.
Come this weekend, the temps drop to 50, we'll start to sell a little energy.
Yeah.
Well, the project went very well, I think, all things considered. The lights look good.
I think that the grid guys ate well at generations.
Over and over.
So, then, you wanted me to bring up Troy, I think, just give everyone the heads up that I believe he's eligible October 5th. I was gonna have a request in for Monday.
So he would be promoted to lineman,
First class.
first class.
Yeah.
Do we need that recommendation?
The contract,
Because it was written into the contract with him during
I
arbitration?
wouldn't say it's a recommendation, but I don't think it's a bad idea to,
Okay.
number one, recognize that he's achieved that status
Mhm.
from a community standpoint, and B, it provides a record. Yeah, I agree that the contract has this stuff in it, but I guess I'm old school on that.
Oh, I just didn't know because we had it in writing from the arbitration.
Promotions, so
We have to do it based upon the agreement we had with the attorneys.
But I agree with Mary.
Well, there is that.
That if we have it in the minutes, then I can just confirm, so.
Yeah, there is
The
that
action taken.
aspect of it too, but I tend to feel that, we've achieved the date when he can advance, and that's part of the contract. The legal agreement, yeah,
Mhm.
that just simply says he, and he's already received that settlement, am I correct?
Yes.
So that part of it's over and done with. So, anything else there, Ken?
Just one crew's up there working on the car charging stations and moving the electric infrastructure away from the fountain, consolidating it towards the Christmas tree.
Did you ever find an answer on whether those fast chargers were bad for cars or not?
They are, I read that the fast chargers, over the life of them can degrade the battery, so you shouldn't use them all the time, but if you use them intermittently, you're fine.
Like on vacation, you don't want to stand.
But if you are constantly fast charging, it will degrade the battery over time. But I think there's newer software that helps mitigate that, so it's not as impactful, but.
So did we go with the fast charger or did we go with?
No.
And it kind of works, because once, we're getting the energy, maybe the parking too, so increase the revenue.
Other than that, we're trying to get out of the water in Lake Placid before it gets any colder. So,
You still have work to do on the land at Sandpoint?
yes. What we're doing is we're first doing the work that requires a boat to get to. So. And then working our way to the island. Whatever involves the most time in the water, we're doing first.
Cold water.
But we
worse
figure
than cold air.
that the water won't be this warm again until July, so.
Sure. It's not very stable to begin with. It's
Yeah.
already started to drop.
It's dropping, but it doesn't warm up quick either.
Warmer than the 1st of May, that's for sure.
But those are all good projects. And, I suspect the department's going to look at this year. You've done a lot. If you go back just a year from now, you were replacing the equipment out on Averville Road. So if you go back if you look at a 1-year period, the projects that the department has undertaken and.
Organizing the tree trimming down the Lodge Road, and then was it the transformers replacement at sub 3, or there was, or the.
That was
sub 3?
3 years ago.
No, it was
Was
just-
it
that's what
really?
I
Oh,
thought.
so.
Oh, really?
I think we just took it.
No, it was at least 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was at least 2 years ago.
So then, just over the last couple of years, done a fair amount of work.
That's
Then we,
Yeah, no, I'm
then
just
we
like.
were up against the wall on Parkside, and one of the places we didn't finish there, where they wanted to put in the parking lot, so we had to complete our pathway down to the pizza joint,
Oh, yeah.
and all the buildings there, so. We got the one pole that kind of,
Speaking
to
of.
me, it sticks out like a sore thumb there by Jerry's junkyard.
The Cunningham building's getting a nice facelift.
I hope so.
Yeah, well, I saw a picture of it. I mean, I don't know if they finally settled on gray as a color rather than red, which we're used to, but I saw some proposed pictures of the finishes, and at least it's getting a nice, I guess
That's
the
too bad
sun
they're not going with red.
took over the business.
I have no idea.
It's too bad they won't look right.
I would have liked
Look
to.
at great for 7 months of the year. Don't need it.
Minimum 7 months of the year.
But overall, I mean, it's not major, but still it's major for that building, which has had nothing put into it. We'll have a new sign on the front.
Since it was a firehouse.
Looking out here, trying to
Mhm.
had a nice antique feeling to it.
Okay.
So it was-
Anything else? Brad was otherwise detained, so he's not here. I did bring to his attention because the Horst Weber from the Wildwood spoke to me a few minutes ago, the lake drain that comes through their swimming pool, their natural swimming pool, the sidewalk where it goes through is collapsing. And there's some, in talking with Brad, he was aware of it already. He's contacted the state because the state has some issues. Apparently sand is passing through it.
Is this our sidewalk just outside of their property? Like,
Well, my first question was, because I happen to know, I'm fairly familiar with Wildwood property, and I happen to know that the village line cuts through it. So I wanted to be, first of all, sure that it was even in the village, but that section is where it goes out, and something that's going to have to be. Brad says we filled it before, and now it's getting a little bit, the state, while they're out there working, and taking a look at it.
Under the sidewalk?
Under the sidewalk, but what they think has happened is the pipe has gone bad, and it's just washing.
Better now than after we paved it, or they paved it.
Mhm.
When I was a little kid, my father had me crawl in there.
Yeah.
What did we do wrong?
Wait a minute, they were waiting for a camera right now, so they can camera this.
Back in the old days, he had a rope tied to me. And I crawled in, and then he knew how far it was, where to dig. Can't do that shit anymore.
You can tell how much you're done. I'll just make another one of them.
Well,
Oh my goodness.
I'm guessing that anything that has to be done to that probably has
That makes sense.
state agency fingers in it somewhere.
Yeah.
But
No,
anyway,
right across the street. I was pulling out of Dax Shack yesterday after I realized it was closed. And I'm waiting to pull out into the road, and I see this little head pop up from a drain. Scared the crap out
It
of
wasn't
me.
Peter, was it?
No.
With a rope around.
It was a little red or little white hard hat, and I'm waiting and I'm waiting, and I could see something move,
Yeah.
but it was just like the very tip of his hard hat, and then all of a sudden he popped up, and I went, oh my God.
The cones around it or something?
Oh yeah, there was cones, but that was it. But I didn't expect to see a person's head pop out of it.
that work that the state is doing out there is going to go on until the season closes out. Although they're moving away from the village as they go. It looks like they've done some pretty good work with respect to resetting all the drains, and then next year they will do a grind and pave. It'd be nice if they could get it done before we get engaged with Main Street.
No idea.
So we're a week away from knowing
7th.
Mhm.
what Main Street may have to offer us. I think that's I did work this week with there's a subcommittee of the Main Street discussion group that was charged with assembling a presentation of all of the work and pictures. I think it's pretty far along. There's 28 or 30 slides in it. My concern is that with narration of any of it, it will probably consume an hour. But it covers all. We did take out, there were 2 prints in there on the, that were just called parking. And I think what we're going to do is just a narration because we don't have those plans at a point yet where we can publicize them really. I think we're going to remove those 2 slides for now and just refer to the fact that there's other work being done on that. It's a separate project. So, and I have not heard, Peter, from Our Lady.
I haven't heard from Holly.
But what I do have a phone number, and I may just do a follow-up phone call. My guess is she went back because their property's listed. They undoubtedly went back to their broker.
Maybe.
I think they were hoping we'd buy the property, but I, in my wildest dreams, don't see that.
Oh, was that still that house up on, was it Hayes?
Hayes Street, yeah. Tear down big time.
Mhm.
$500,000 tear down.
Well, and it's a difficult tear down because they really don't have any way to.
Access it.
That's an 8-foot right of way.
Can you see taking a tandem truck in there? Neither do I. I don't know how I don't know what they're thinking about.
We couldn't, it seems awfully expensive for an exit, a potential exit for a parking structure, but we couldn't do that. What? Like
To
have
Hayes
that-
Street?
The Hayes Street and have that as a,
The layout is, their exit is a driveway that comes in from Hayes over somebody else's property. It's an 8-foot wide easement.
okay.
If you were going to use it for that, you use
4 feet
Marcy.
over 2 people's property.
Right there.
I'm just saying, having 2 exits, what outflows might mitigate some of our traffic.
Doesn't even cars.
Yeah, so
It's 8 feet.
I don't think that the surrounding property owners.
Usually they're 13 feet. This is.
It doesn't appear to be private, but we're certainly, you know, we want to work with them as much as we can.
Mhm.
And again, I mean, the first shot we took at it, the design just simply took too much of the property even from our perspective, we saw that.
Mhm.
So hopefully, I think this presentation, Peter, from the discussion I listened to the other day, it's probably going to be toward the end of October. We'll have, actually, the only benefit is we'll know what the bids are. Let's hope.
Yeah, so when you say presentation, is online? Or is
It'll be put out on some media forum. I mean, right now, it's the type of presentation that I'd be very comfortable doing in a meeting room with a screen. But I think Dan Cash is doing the work, is designing it so that it can be, we can incorporate voiceover with it. And do some of that.
something
Yeah,
similar
Jim
to
Rogers
what they
doing
did,
that,
what
yeah.
the Sports Council did
Yeah,
before that meeting.
yeah.
It can be totally online, correct, if it used to be.
Well, it's the way it'll have to be now. We can't have a group gathering of any value. I mean, for small groups or a presentation, you know, I think, and again, the nice thing is that you can include as many or exclude as many slides as you need to shorten it, depending on where it's used. But so far, I mean, it looks good. We asked that the renderings on the bump outs be improved to show a street lamp and a parking meter, so people don't get the idea that it's just plants. Because we're putting all of the, one of the advantages of the bump outs is that it gives us the ability to move the street poles and parking meters off the sidewalk, so that we get the full 6 foot.
Will you also try to incorporate artwork into that or not?
You know, the art council, they're doing some good work. I'm actually encouraged. Some of it's fairly modest, some of it's storefront window type stuff, but
Will you try to put some in the bump outs for the display or not?
I know Dean wants some, I don't know where this will go. I think this is something that, you know, the appearance committee probably will weigh in on, but I think until we physically see these bump outs in terms of how much they can manage, I don't know. But you know, I think the Arts Council is doing a lot of, I think they're doing some good work. I'm encouraged to think that we may have some things of interest that will help, spruce up our street a little bit. So,
I just think the residents would like
That
to
can always come later.
oh, yeah, I just think the residents would like to see that the bump outs are functional and not a waste of just.
Well, and the concern I have, and I listened to some discussion on it from the group the other day, is that the bump outs and the crosswalks are really put there, in my mind at least, with the intent that we're going to somehow encourage pedestrians to use the crosswalks.
Oh, that would be ideal.
Or when they do use them, they're in the road less,
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
minimize their time.
Well, but today you have people at dark anywhere and everywhere.
Right, but if you're crossing a crosswalk, you can still get by a car that's parked on the road. And with these bump outs, it moves you.
It gives the driver a visibility that they don't otherwise have. I did ask Peter, and I don't know if I mentioned it to you or not, but in looking at the current rendering of the crosswalks, there's a crosswalk at the clock tower area, and there's a crosswalk that will now be in front of the Creperie building, the Mountain Creperie, what crosses there. In between there's a section where people pull up and park and run into Starbucks all the time. So I suggested to Brad that we look to see if we can add, there's a bump out there already, if we can somehow get a crosswalk in there. Because people coming down from assuming we complete the parking garage project, the elevator and the stairs are on the easterly end of the parking lot, and I don't see people walking all the way over to
Yeah.
the other side. So Brad was going to discuss that with.
Yeah, I don't know how Ivan's dealing with that elevation change from Starbucks down to the street.
Yeah, I know, but there's got to be some way to deal with it that would work, because that's just an obvious place where
Mhm.
and people running out of the parking lot and not wanting to go to either end. I think
Yeah.
that's something we didn't catch at the beginning.
Good spot for it.
Here.
Okay,
You okay with that?
Sure. you're set.
We're not entertaining you.
Well, I've got the green transportation deal from 6 to 8.
Oh, you're sitting on that?
Yeah, I gotta speak on it tomorrow.
Good seeing you.
Yeah, how about it?
There is, just to share with you, there's some long range value. This is about, it's in associated connection with the university games and improving mobility around the area, maybe even going so far as to EVs.
Mhm.
But I will also tell you that there's the village with Clarkson this summer went through we submitted a fairly substantial grant application to the National Institute of Science. And the primary purpose of that was a master mobility plan program. Planning is phase one, and then there's a second phase where there's funding. So this, and ANCA was at the table on some of that. So there's a lot, there could be some real opportunity here if in fact we're successful.
Yeah,
It was
having.
really great, Jason. How much PhDs write a grant application? It's very interesting.
Very thorough.
It's more reading than you can do in one night, I can tell you that.
Thanks, Kimball.
Sorry,
Um,
I gotta walk on stop before I tell you the truth.
But we're looking at that in part to help maybe, if we were successful, it might help to fund also some of the municipal
Good job on
parking,
the
hillside
substation.
parking.
No thanks. Have you been down?
Makes sense.
It looks so clean without the nice metering there. The old night.
I'm waiting for an invite.
Well, wait a minute, he's got a building down there that's heated, we can have a board meeting.
Where you seen it? I'm sure you have.
Thank you, Ken. So, is there anything else, anybody else wants to bring up? I wanted to get back on the topic of, we're working on the meter rates, which is one thing. And you did see, there's an article that was in the paper she picked up from a comment in our board meeting the other night. So we're beginning to put a little publicity out there about the fact that there may be some changes coming. I don't, she wanted more information, and I said, well, at this point, I said, we're working on that, but I also started looking at the speed limits on our streets, Billy had mentioned to me, for example, Mirror Lake Drive out here, the village portions are marked 25 miles an hour, but they're actually 30. So anybody that gets pulled over, it's not a ticket that can be supported. So what I did, because none of us look at our local laws all that much, I copied for each one of you Chapter 280, which is in addition to the issue, but it also covers the nighttime, no nighttime parking on 260 on Main Street. And I just thought maybe now's the time when we should go through this whole regulation. And if we're going to ask Janet, because we're going to have a public hearing anyway, before we ask Janet to do a lot, I thought we should look at the law first. And prompt some things. But on this particular one, the all-night parking is in section 280-2, and it's there, although most of us have kind of forgotten where it was, I guess. Speed regulations I was looking at, 280-10, 30 miles per hour is established as the maximum speed for vehicles which may proceed within the corporate limits of except where the speed limit has been otherwise established and except in those areas designated as school zones.
Where are you now? I'm sorry.
280.10 Art. And then later on in this chapter, there's segments that have to do with one-way streets. We were talking about Parkside, for example. I just thought it might be helpful to.
So it's 30 miles an hour down Lower Parkside?
Well,
Sounds-
we have
seems a little dangerous.
we have 25 mile an hour signs around, but if you go to section 280-22, well, that's the school zones, but there's a section in here, but speed zones are not.
Honestly, with the amount of cars on Parkside, you can't even really go 30 miles an hour, 20 maybe.
Yeah.
A few years
Parked
ago,
cars and-
I rode in place doing the marathon, the lead runner. And he was going so fast that they could hardly stay ahead of him going down Parkside
Wow.
because of the speed, yeah.
Wow.
He was pushing it.
The school zones are indicated in here, but there doesn't appear to be any other, and if we're going to do that, in talking with Bill, I got the impression that it would be, if in fact we put a sign out there, but it has no validity in terms of the citation, and I mean, it's there only to provide moral encouragement to somebody to slow down.
Mhm.
Now, I'm talking with the supervisor today. He said that if the village speed limit, which it is posted, is 25, that he will consider having the town slow the backside of the lake where most of the bypass traffic is going.
We tried doing that before, and the state will not let you go any lower than 30.
Well, I'll leave that up to that.
We tried to do it, and that's why it's listed as 30, and then if you want certain areas within the village to be lower, you can do certain areas.
Oh, because that's
That's why
state
some.
jurisdiction as far as ticketing, right?
It's just the way it's like you can't have a 15 mile an hour zone. They won't. It's not.
Unless you build a school there.
Exactly.
What do you
So
mean by that? You mean that
A
zones?
village speed
zones
limit
of
is
the village?
noted as 30 miles an hour, and then if you say, like the backside of the lake, if you wanted it to be 25 miles an hour, you have to put up signs. They're supposed to say area speed limit, 25 miles an hour, because it's posted 30 at the village limits. So the village is 30, and then underneath it, it'll say unless otherwise posted. So then you have sections that you carve out why you need it to be lower.
Yeah.
So then that area, you put signs that say area speed limit, 25 miles an hour.
That's fine.
Yeah, but you can't do the whole area.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is you carve out where you think 30 is not an appropriate speed, and you want it to be
In
25.
other words, when you say you can't do the whole, you mean the whole village.
The whole
You could do
village.
the backside of the
But you
lake.
could do, if you wanted the backside of Mirror Lake, to be 25, you can do it. You just have to post it from here, area speed limit. Not just 25 miles an hour, say area speed limit, 25 miles an hour. And you have to do it on both sides, and not anyone that intersects with it.
So in theory,
What
going
about,
down,
it's all in the code book that tells you how to.
going down Elm Street, it could be 30
Well-
miles an hour. In theory, even if it's 20, it's 25, it's 30, unless they come out, do what you said and like make it. But you can't go any lower than 25, is that what you're saying?
Unless it's a school zone.
So if it's a
I mean,
school zone.
Hillcrest area, Elm Street area.
Yeah, it's crazy. The Essex Street, 30 miles an
You
hour.
ever tried to drive 15 miles?
What's that?
Cars on Eagle is about.
Well, you can, it's kind of dangerous. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's a difference whether you can or you should.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
You're welcome to go, thanks.
I totally get it. But I'm just saying whether you, if you're a responsible driver, it's difficult
I
too.
mean, you can do
No,
large
that's okay.
areas, don't get me wrong.
That's
But
totally fine.
state highway is 30, and we're not gonna get that any lower than 30. So you can't have a village speed limit of less than 30 miles an hour unless you have designated areas.
Okay.
I think.
So if you wanted the rest of the village to be 25, you would just have to post it off on Main Street.
Yeah.
At the area speed limit, 25 miles an hour. Kind of a sign problem, but
I'm
you
inclined
can do
to,
it.
yeah, I'm inclined to think of neighborhoods, residential neighborhoods as being where an area speed limit of 25 would be.
Like,
But frankly, I,
They all used to be at one time. A lot of there's at least 10 streets that were all designated as 25 miles.
were they designated or they just have signs?
It was designated in the local law, and then when we redid it all, they said you can't just designate a street, it has to be be properly posted.
what I'd like to do is because we're going to have, assuming the Main Street project gets underway, we're going to be creating some disruptions, some traffic patterns, that's for sure. And I think we ought to be prepared with the fact that, that Hillcrest, for example, well, I don't want to see that as a major diversion. I'm sure it will be.
Mhm.
But we ought to at least take the steps we can take so that we can point to the neighborhood and say, look, this is what we're doing. And frankly, some of the neighborhoods have asked for it anyway.
I can't see anything less than going one way down Hillcrest is going to appease anyone once the traffic really starts going through there.
But the speed limit, even if it's one way,
It'll still-
25 is a relatively safe speed. 30 starts to hit the point where, I practiced this all summer around Mirror Lake because I was trying to convince Jay to do something where they were constructing. People were walking in the road
Mhm.
and we were still doing 30 miles an hour through there. It's not safe.
Mhm.
At 25, you can control your vehicle pretty well.
Mhm.
But
I know we talked about it when I can't remember the outcome. If we do make Hillcrest one way, can we make the other lane parking?
we don't really want to do that.
Well, if you take away parking on Main Street, you've got nowhere for people to park. It would give you a huge parking lot close to Main Street.
That's a thought.
Yeah,
Just don't think-
I'm gonna count up how many extra we actually get. In front of my house and I don't know if it's any more than like 20 or. 25.
But if you have that.
For the whole street.
The whole street, just turn it.
Yeah, no, but there's so many private drives and that take up space.
Yeah,
Okay.
that makes sense.
And if a garage is or parking structure is ever built, another place to send people
It's
from
gonna
your
be,
building.
that's what I was thinking.
But until then,
But then I paid attention how many you could actually get. I didn't count it, but it's not as many as I thought. More and above what, they park in front of the park already. They park all in front of the
Sure.
stone wall already.
Yeah, that section of Hillcrest is slightly wider.
Unless you could.
But you raise a good point, Peter. I mean, I hadn't thought about it, but you're right. There's a lot of private driveways. And then again, we run into the very issue that
Main Street.
Main Street has with the driveway on Main Street that, we have a property owner who's just been brutal. with
I
us.
mean, the good news is it's
We've done what we
always,
can
it'd always be left-hand turn. You're not crossing a
That's
lane because it's only left lane. So it's less of an issue there if we have one-way traffic.
Possibly you might be able to come in on a 45 when you're looking at it, think of it that way too. you know, if there's already some shoulder and there's a possibility of coming in, it might give you more spaces.
The problem with that is so let's say we stripe it, but then what happens in July and August? Because we just open it up to normal two-way traffic.
Use the Irish method, you just all share the road.
Or do we keep it one way for the whole summer too?
Well, and
It
like,
does.
you know, once Great Manning sets the, or Donnelly, I guess, is the ones that does the traffic stuff. Once it's set, we certainly want to, not going to want
True.
to take it
For
up
the
twice a
expense of
season.
putting it up and taking it down.
Yeah.
So we are definitely, when it comes to construction, we're definitely stopping.
When we go two-way on Main Street, there's no need for all the other signage.
You know, it'll tell how much it costs to stop and
Yeah,
start.
the one-way on Main Street,
Except that when September comes, we got to put the signage on.
signage all back, yeah.
And then I solve the paint issue.
The only thing that I think will probably, you know, absolutely wouldn't move would be once we're successful at getting the light at West Valley, I think that'll stay there.
Stay so.
It should be there anyway.
For sure.
I would be perfectly willing to let the, to have the traffic light at Hannaford moved up to West Valley. It would save a lot of complaints.
Oh, substantial amount. So it'd be a pain coming into
Just
town.
think of the state law that says that
Great.
a village can't be set less than 30. The entire village can't be set less than 30.
Yep.
But gives you the opportunity to lower it to 25 and under.
Which seems to be consistent with how some of this was written. But what we don't have anywhere noted is where we are recognizing.
Right, what areas. Because it just says unless other designated, so you just pick where you want it to be, and as long as it's properly signed, you're good to go.
Is that a project that the police commissioners would take on? With Bill?
I've made a note to talk to them.
You know, yeah, I mean, what's the point of, if we can, if we've got to do something to make them enforceable, that's I think that's the point that
Well, basically, I'll ask about everything in here. If what you're saying is Jan's going to do a review and this is the time to make changes.
well, because if we have to do one change on here, we still have to do a public hearing, although, as you know, people don't usually come out much. But if you were going to look, for example, at one-way streets for the addition, and maybe, you know, maybe we put something in there about Hillcrest being one way for a certain designated window of time.
That's all the 911 when they changed it. A third of these streets no longer exist.
No, Pine Street's Elm Street.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I'll update that as well.
So this is a project, I mean, if we start looking at this now, we've got time to work on it without having to just do a rush, hurry up job. And I think when I started looking at it, I realized there was other opportunities in here that where the legislation has gotten out of date. And if in fact we add a crosswalk, that's got to be added in here too. I don't know about that for a while. So with that article in the newspaper today, we'll get a little bit of a sense of public reaction to that. And really only focused, for the most part, only focused on the municipal lot, which
Yeah, I didn't see that.
we'll see what comes out of that. So that's that case. I can bring you up to date a little bit. Art, maybe you, the land use code revision group received today, this afternoon, I received a copy, I think, of the work.
Did you get the updated one?
The updated, as did the supervisor. I got it electronically. We can share that, but I think probably, as with any one of these documents, we probably want to have Janet take a quick look at it. You think?
And the whole idea behind this is just giving this out to firms that might come in, like say, maybe Des Moines, telling them what we want looked at.
So
This is giving an area scope of what work there is.
Okay, that's separate from the changes that that building office wanted to.
Well, those kind of come into the category of no-brainer. They're just, change of parentheses here or a period.
but they still have to go to public hearing.
Yeah, but Doug made a comment if we shouldn't go to public hearing because there's a whole lot more that they need changed. that,
Right, but I think
wasn't
where you were
even in
getting
there.
is some of the changes that they need done are no-brainers, and some of them really should have someone that an expert, like what's happened in other communities with putting campers in the front yard or the backyard, some of the things like that. Why not get an outside opinion? Because some of the other stuff is just parentheses changes. So we try to whittle that down. But we're close.
Well, I just received the updated, the revised draft, which I think was worked on this morning. So
And I think Liz has a few more, she did a good job on that.
who actually did it? It's pretty well written.
Yeah, Liz Clark.
Liz? Wow. Yeah, she is.
It was quite entertaining listening to her on the phone with Dean. It was a good show.
Well, it's,
She speaks right up.
it's, and I think also Brad and I are, we have agreed to participate on on this salt reduction committee of the Osable River thing. I think we have a meeting with that, I think it's at 8:30 on the 15th of October to begin that. With the state having moved this a little bit further along, and although it hasn't got the governor's signature yet, I expect it will. And it'll be a Adirondack Park-wide pilot project. So let's say since we're right in the middle of it, and we've got the most challenged body of water in the park, I guess it made sense to me that we should.
Well, and don't forget about the people's wells. I mean, that's just as challenging.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, in my mind, that's why the state should be working really hard. How they're going to come up with alternatives to improve the road surfaces without salt treatment, I think would be an interesting task. Yeah, from our perspective, we can build a new stormwater system and we can hopefully slow that whole process down to a point where it meets desirable standards that will protect the lake. Time will tell. All these things are works in progress. I understand we do have one of those, we do have the plow that, remember
Live edge.
plow, we do have that, so that'll be put into use this year.
Even the map itself, where the hot spots for where salt was being introduced on.
Yep.
What, I keep forgetting the reference, the geographic reference. You say the east side here? Is it the east side or the west side of the lake? Yes, where it was just from one report, you see like right hot spots to just now it's disappeared. The fact that like.
Can't be a hotspot,
But
No, that's what I'm saying, just the progress of the installation of that has removed that. So we see a more immediate sort of response if we're able to do that on the more heavily traffic side.
And
We're going.
that's a good point, and we want to remember to emphasize that with the community, that we already can demonstrate the fact that just the east side stormwater change we made created a difference in in that section of the lake. If we can continue that down Main Street, we'll hit.
And that's why,
We got 200 feet now.
yes. And this is where the majority of it's coming in from parking lots and the road and state and everything else. So.
But you know what?
That was phosphorus.
I've been focused on Main Street and our public responsibilities. But when you stop and step back and the number of parking lots that are private, that's a task that the group, I think, wants to address in a more, and frankly, we're going to have to get landowners.
We should connect that group with a particular owner of a parking lot who has a driveway next to one of the stores. And maybe he can address his parking lot to make sure that it's safe for the lake.
Well, one of the biggest problems we had was the hill.
What's that? You don't know if
Stark
I,
Avenue, Main Street, Marcy, I mean, those were some of the heavily salted ones when we didn't.
Well,
Those
and
will
let's
be
not
mitigated.
forget the lot across the street from the bank gets, we wallop that hillside with salt, so.
Maybe all those will be picked up.
When we recreate that, if we're fortunate enough to get there, hopefully we're gonna be smart enough to heat that so that we don't have to do that, because I can remember, was it last winter, the winter before, we had a very severe rainstorm at 5 o'clock, and the cars, they couldn't even let them down the hill.
They were, parked cars were running into each
They
other.
were sliding into each other,
Yeah.
just sideways. So, I mean, that's another goal here is, you know, and again, I gingerly bring up the concept of private parking lots that also need to look at this, because the village has two of the worst ones.
Part of the problem.
So we'll keep moving on that. I think other than that, Brad and I had a discussion, we're out bidding, we put out bids for sand. This year that there's a pit in Wilmington that had spoken to us last year, very nice gentleman, who wanted us to consider sand from over there, which, you know, we Trudeau is our main supplier at the moment, and that it's all a bid, it's a competitive bid situation. But in investigating it, we did send some trucks over, and we got a sample. There's a couple of problems with it for us. Number one, there's no scales. So you don't know if you've got 8 tons on or 10 tons. That's a little bit of an issue. And number two, he doesn't issue a ticket when the truck is loaded. So if your truck is out on the highway loaded, you've got no proof of what you're carrying for weight. So what I suggested to Brad was that for this year, we continue to do it in the manner that we have, but let the people know that if they can provide, the other thing they don't do, they don't load. Your truck driver has to go over there, get on their loader, load the sand, there's a liability with that. So that, all things considered, I suggested to Brad, we certainly are interested. But the guy did say that he thought next year he would have a loader, and I said, well, maybe he can get a set of scales so that he's, you know, you can know what you're carrying. So I suggested to Brad, we just not entertain or not offer them that opportunity this year, but let them know that we'll look at it next year if they can provide those 3 things. The town's hauling all the sand from there now. Trucks go by my door every morning, a bunch of them. But, you know, my question to Brad was, you know, how big is the pit?
I hate to cut off your nose and spike your face, down the road.
So we're following our traditional pattern this year, but certainly you should be aware of the fact that next year there might be an opportunity to become a little more competitive.
I would think that would be substantially less expensive for us to even entertain the idea without those parameters in place. Was the cost at this pit was substantially less than what we were.
I didn't get into that with Brad. He was driving. But we certainly can.
Yeah.
I mean,
It must be if they're not looking at the prerequisites that we are.
Well, the reason that I thought last year when I met the guy was, you know what, if that's a way to get our price down, then competitive bidding is a good way to go usually. But I did not know at the time that conditions were not quite as optimal as they should. At Trudeau's pit, they're not even allowed to get out of the truck. They're allowed to get out of the truck to get the ticket when they're done loading, and that's it. Hard hats.
Seems like a more formal situation.
Well, you know. So there's that. What else we got? I think that's about all I got this afternoon. There's a lot of stuff, seems like taking up a lot of time, but At the moment, we're sort of in a holding pattern on the big project, which is the Main Street. For a few
So
more
we get
days.
some good bids.
Well, our reason for granting them from September 23rd to October 7th was
Sharpen the pencils.
the advice of two of the major contractors that want to bid the job, but they didn't feel that the complexity of it and the time we gave them didn't match. So we gave them more time.
Hopefully they maximize the additional time.
I'm anxious to get to a point where we can sit down with a contractor and we can put some answers on the table for some of the things that the street folks would like
Mhm.
to know a little bit more about. And,
Yeah,
you know, I'm very hopeful that if this goes forward, that we will be able to somehow form a liaison with the street and the contractor so that, you know, we offer as much consideration as possible.
I think that's critical considering what we're currently facing and what could be facing next year, so.
Craig, do you want to plan on doing the business association meeting on the 13th, second Tuesday? I mean, basically, they're going to want to know about Main Street. You're going to have the most answers. Then I'll just stay with the land code. But if you'd rather, you can tell me, I'll tell them.
I'm happy to do that. You're right. I mean, that is the one thing they want to hear from the village. The other thing I want to do, I was thinking about it during a telephone conference call this afternoon with Bruce and about 40 odd people, is we're approaching a time of the year. There is no hockey this year, right? So we're approaching a time with Columbus Day and the October weekends over, where we're going to be back, in my opinion, in a situation very much like April and May were here.
exactly. It's going to be completely
And
different.
the thought that I had was
Potential.
to approach the business association and suggest that, you know, we do some brainstorming here and see, we should, at the very least, I'm hopeful that we can encourage the curbside type deliveries. Although there may be no problem with parking anyway.
Yeah.
But somehow we need to do something to keep our community up. I mean, we'll be coming into the December period with not much going on here. There's absolutely no events.
You'll have 2 months with nothing.
Well, I hope that we can really truly, once winter comes, emphasize skating and really de-emphasize winter hiking because that'll be significantly annoying.
One thing
The
I
trailheads
heard
are
today,
packed in the winter.
which
Annoying to you.
for visitors,
Yes, they are.
for our own residents, I guess the new coaster system out of Hovenberg is in, and I was with
It's not
somebody
open
that
yet, though.
No, it's not open to the public, but I'm told that it's going to be, it will be, first of all, you will be able to control your speed, which is interesting in itself. But the person that I was speaking to had taken some demonstration
Where is
rides on
this?
it
Sorry?
and said that it was really going to be an exciting, nice event for people.
John Morgan was impressed.
That was
What is
good.
this?
The mountain coaster.
Oh, the
It
mountain
it goes,
coaster?
mimics the bobsled run.
Oh, interesting. Here we go.
I gave myself a self-guided tour Sunday before last. The whole thing is so impressive. It's like you're in Europe. How much money they spent there?
Yeah.
The whole package.
I haven't seen it yet.
You got,
See, it's
you can't get in there when it's construction days. So Sunday is the day.
Can you just walk in on Sunday or?
I just, well, you don't ask anybody because they'll never let you.
Are you recommending this as a village trustee or?
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you have to be Peter Holderried or can anyone? Is that the Heights
It's
House?
massive.
Oh, wow.
And this is the start of the push.
Yeah.
It goes all the way to the other side of the building.
It goes through the building.
Through the building, and that's the roller
So the-
part of it.
No
It's on
way.
top of the 32, the mountain coaster.
So the museum and all the store or
How big is it?
offices in there have
That's
these
mountain
push tracks.
coaster.
It's kind of clever.
That's, they didn't pour concrete, this is the start of the push.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't pour concrete. And then it goes down, way down to the basement, and then it goes up again.
Really?
It's the inside of the building. The building's got a lot of work to do. And that's the whole biathlon where they shoot into. It
Mhm.
used to be the big parking lot.
Yeah,
We've all heard there's a new trailhead out at the lodge, right? Just drive right up to
You drive right up to Marcy Dam.
Drive right up to Marcy.
So,
You didn't read about that?
don't even say that. I'm like, I'm a part of this Adirondack backcountry. Yeah. What's through South Meadow?
Which didn't collapse, some of those bridges.
So something.
South Meadow,
something happened.
I got heard from South Meadow. He must have, it was either unlocked or must have cut something, drove a Jeep, it was at Marcy Dam. And now it's a meme on this back, and then really I have to turn it off because I get so angry because I'm just like, I don't find it amusing to get home. Like, yeah. And they're like, well, we didn't know. I guess we got fined.
And then they were building a fire where they shouldn't, and the whole package.
Yeah, the whole package was bizarre, but, you know, they had, I mean, the High Peaks had the highest count they've ever had in the history of the weekend of
No
bikers.
Canadians.
I literally
No
could not.
Canadians here. And I think they counted 512 cars on the Lodge Road parked.
You had to go several miles back before you even got to the parking lot and then started your hike. And then it was almost like a line at Disneyland. I'm like, this is insane. This is an, I'm not gonna get started.
Hiker feet.
That, yeah, the time from the. You know, the tree hugging.
That's who they are, right?
None of these. I would. You gotta dig, you gotta dig down. You gotta take the time to do it.
So Joey McCully was a 46, and he was like, you are, like, he was ashamed of me or something.
Oh, really?
McCully?
Oh,
You know, because he's, like, should be in snowmobiles.
it's always snowmobiles. Oh, geez. I'm gonna get a snowmobile and drive 2 miles an hour just to annoy him and his friends. Just right out in front of him, going like a grandma down the.
I guess the other thing worth mentioning is that Kate Thompson's group's been working with Anita, and they've come a long way on the village website, doing some of the consolidation.
Are we sticking with digital towpath? I know
Well,
that's.
they had a conference, they had an hour-long conference call with digital, and I understood that from Anita at least, that you know, it was a good conversation. There's maybe a few things that could be done. It's not going to change a lot.
But she actually said there was a lot more you could do with it than she thought.
Mhm.
And I think it's a good intermediate step to maybe 1 or 2 years down the road where we may have the two boards merge, or the two village and town merge. But for now, we can at least make it more user friendly.
Yeah, I think
It's
that
pretty,
seems
it's
to
pretty
be.
apparent right now that the village will probably move forward, try to make some improvements in what we're working with, but the town is not in a position to do that right now.
And I understand, as far as the branding, and not to delay this meeting, as far as the branding is concerned, I'm conflicted with the town's adoption of the logo. What would be the village, what would then appear to be the village logo?
They've always used it.
But it was never predominantly on their letterhead or now that it seems to be, and it's, if we're moving towards that sort of integration, I'm 100% behind it, but it just seems to sort of confuse people because most people really don't even understand the fact that there's 2 municipalities as there is.
Well, I haven't talked to anybody that's in town, that they're on vacation, someone says, where are you from? They say North Elba.
Yeah, no,
They consider themselves like Placid.
oh, I agree 100%. I just, but if you're like, oh, I want to go talk to the assessor. Well, you talk to me as a trustee, like, well, it's under the town's jurisdiction. What's the difference? I live in Lakeland. That's where,
Thank God it's the same assessment.
what's that?
It's the same assessment.
Yeah, but we have no sort of formal they're not in our formal structure in our village organization.
That's the whole intent of this converged 2 websites, is that you will just go in and say, I want to.
That I can understand and support. It's
And
just,
then it'll just take you where you need to go, so you're not confused. You don't even know where you've gone.
yeah, and having to go to 2 different websites and there's 2 different, I can understand that, the convergence.
And I can see something where if you had a question on plowing or something, you might type in your address and it'll take you to the village, town, or the village or the town highway department. You know, a lot of good things can come.
I can
I do too. I think
I can see, for example, somebody wanting to know something about their water service.
Yeah, they don't go
And
to.
now not knowing that it is in the village
Mhm.
domain, not the town. So if you've got a website that is seamless but goes in the directions that it needs to go, I think that's what
what
they
it
were
needs to do.
sort of suggesting that I thought I
But it
heard.
needs to be done well, otherwise it's going, it's gonna exacerbate the confusion that exists.
Or if you get a speeding ticket, you type it, where did you get it? And it'll take you to the town or village court and give you the hours, you know. That would be nice so people aren't showing up at the wrong court. Not knowing.
Who'd you get pulled over, questions, who'd you get pulled over by? Here's the court show.
Okay.
Kate doesn't seem to do anything halfway, so trust me, I think if she's gonna put her name on this, she'll do a good job with it. She won't do it.
Oh, no, I agree, but I think maybe this is the time that where maybe we, as the two boards, visit the integration of the two boards. I think there's substantial support from the existing members. We maybe take the temperature of the public to see if that is something that they're interested in.
Well, what she's doing at this point are the low hanging fruit, easy things that can be cleaned up where you have information in 4 different spots and put it all in one.
Oh, I agree 100%.
And what you're doing is you're not wasting your time on this because eventually when we get to what you're talking about, those pieces are there, they just fit right into the new website.
I do with that. Sure. All right.
Scott, take it a fit.
So you folks will be around to do that.
Yeah.
I don't have to do that.
Yeah, just forget it.
Give us the nod then.
So your grandchild is doing remote? Your grandchild's doing remote learning?
Yeah.
Yeah, just,
But get it just today, if I get off the court and got tested today, only 3 days till,
Like they look like their caliber